enough. Trouble needs love, and I do think that Vex Red Tree has some really good passives, but a lot of those really good passives are at the T1 tier. Uh, really, really rarely do you need to spec past T1 on Red Tree Vex, and so for that, I'm not going to rate the tree very highly. Like there are like the bonus kinetic damage or upkeeping your action skill in T1, but everything past that's like almost worse. And so action skills not good, deep passives aren't good, and for that reason, I don't rate Red Tree Vex very highly. And then we get to Green Tree Vex. Green Tree Vex is S tier. So many things are great in Green Tree. And when I originally put Green Tree Vex in S tier, people are like, well, but her action skill's bad. It's like, yeah, Incarnate's not doing a ton of damage, but you get Witchy Trigger Finger and you get infinite sticky stacking. You get infinite ordnance. Who cares if it doesn't do that much damage if it's so build enabling? You can stack tons of stickies with her action skill, which is one of the highest damage options in the game. Plus, you can use ordnance with it. And she's got some of the strongest passives in the game where you can get 3+3 of all of her kill skills. You can proc kill skills on crits. You get like 100+ bonus kinetic damage. You get damage scaling off of your health. There just really isn't any reason to not spec into Green Tree for like crazy gun damage, crit damage, bleed. It's so good. And even though Incarnate itself is not dealing a ton of damage, the utility it provides is pretty crazy, from more upkeep while your action skill is up to just infinite ammo, without having to really spec anything for infinite ammo. So that is why we're going to put Green Tree Vex into S tier. Next, we get Blue Tree Harlow. Blue Tree Harlow, we're going to be putting into C tier. As I kind of mentioned, 0 point is butt. I don't like it. I really think it needs some major changes, not only to like some numerical buffs, but I think they just need to change the way that the 0 point action skill functions inherently. 0 point has a augment called Inertia that when you kill an enemy, another enemy is grasped. I think that just needs to be inherently built into the skill, because it feels like Blue Tree 0 point is almost there, but you need either to be able to use 2 capstones or to be able to use 2 augments, because it's got like these pieces that if you could put them all together, it'd be really strong, but you can't because you're limited by the amount of capstones and augments. So I really think they need to like maybe work in some of her augments just to like as a base for how 0 point functions. Make it a duration-based action skill. Make it so that when you kill enemies, it regrasps enemies by default, and then you could spec all those cool things about how you want to slam them, or if you want to make cryo explosions, or if you want to be able to grab multiple and slam multiple at the same time. I just think it needs a rework. However, Blue Tree passives are really good. Action skill crit, fire rate. You got entanglement, transfer, lots of good things. Big bonus cryo damage. However, her action skill is just really bad. And so for that, I'm going to be putting her into C tier. Next, we've got Red Tree Harlow. Red Tree Harlow, in my opinion, is in S tier. Now, I've made 2 big like Red Tree builds. Both like Neutron Capture, which we've talked about, is really strong. It is easily one of her strongest builds and easily one of the strongest builds in the game, with the amount of single target that you get out of Neutron Capture. However, now that we're in endgame, you get to spam your action skill with like a Skeptic class mod. Plus, Red Tree is really good for status effect builds. I made a Half-Life Harlow build that is putting like 300, 400,000 plus dot ticks of radiation on enemies. So like even if you're not using Neutron Capture, this skill tree is really good for status effects, getting more status effect chance, duration, damage, bonus rad damage against enemies entangled. It's really, really good. And I think the only real weakness of Red Tree, in my opinion, is that it lacks a bit of survivability. But once we're in endgame, we can solve that with things like a kill spring. So you can like minimize some of those weaknesses. And then we get Green Tree Harlow. Now, this is a tough one. I get asked this a ton of which one do I think is better, Green Tree Harlow or Red Tree Harlow. And I think Red Tree Harlow, as I ranked it for leveling, is the better skill. And until you get like specific weapons with specific Jacob's rolls and specific enhancements, I think Red Tree Harlow is just better than Green Tree. However, at endgame, if I was to put on the best gear that I have possible, I personally would take Green Tree Harlow over Red Tree. Infinicrit Harlow with Excited State, with Nuclear Winter, with all of the survivability, all of the shield amp, constantly amping all of your shots, the survivability, the fire rate stacking, the gun damage of Halo. It just has like everything that you could want. And you can go full green tree, all of your points, and all of a sudden you get infinite ammo, or you could put some points into blue tree and you have infinite halo. I just think green tree's action skills, its passives, everything in there are so good. And I think it is easily deserving of S tier. Next, we get Blue Tree Rafa or Apophis Lance Rafa. I'm going to be putting Apophis Lance Rafa into A tier. Now, next we get Blue Tree Rafa, which I have like a tough time. I think it's like A plus tier or like S minus tier. Blue Tree Rafa's just like teetering on the edge. Blue Tree's skills and passives are insane. You can get, your action skill dealing double damage or hitting multiple times. You can get like off or infinite crit. You can get tons of crit chance, gun damage, ammo regen. Some of the highest fire rate, if not the highest fire rate in the game from Blue Tree. It's a really, really good passives. However, I just don't like the Apophis Lance action skill. It just feels bad to use. Or the Raiju or Raijin, you have to be like up close and really, really personal to enemies. I think Blue Tree Rafa personally feels better with Peacebreaker cannons than Apophis Lance, hence the Ranger Rafa build, which is currently my favorite Rafa build to play. And that specs mainly into Blue Tree. So the passives are really good on Blue Tree Rafa, but I think Apophis Lance just feels a bit awkward and clunky to use, particularly by the fact that the best class mod in the game for Rafa is the Dancer, and using Apophis Lance while it's active, you can't use your ordnance at all. You're stuck in that, and personally, I just don't like the Apophis Lance, but it's undeniable how powerful the passives in Blue Tree Rafa are, so we're going to be putting it in A tier. Could very easily be argued for S. And then we get Red Tree Rafa. I think Red Tree Rafa is definitely S tier. There's so many different ways to build and play Red Tree Rafa. Whether you're going the Ricochet Rafa route on the left side, you can go Meteor Chucks. You can do Fire Pot Grenades with the indirect damage. There's a bunch of different ways to play the left side. Then you get the right side, which has 175% splash damage increases. Plus, Tamario gives you ridiculous amounts of gun damage. And you get Sultado to double all of your overdrive bonuses. Red Tree is crazy. Peacebreaker cannons are nuts. You can go AFK Rafa and beat the entire game without ever having to shoot your guns. I just think Red Tree is just so ridiculously strong. The one thing that it is lacking a bit of is survivability. Your only real survivability nodes are the movement speed health regen, which is solid. You can get 10% health regen per second, which is pretty good. And the lifesteal from your indirect projectiles is decent, but it's definitely not the best healing up here. I would definitely give that to Green Vex or Green Harlow. And next we get Green Tree Rafa. Now I'm gonna be putting Green Tree Rafa into B tier, and I'm saying this is someone who's one-shot most of the bosses in the game with arc knives. Arc knives is the thing with melee in this game is it's just putting you at a disadvantage. There are enemies that one-shot you regardless of your build because they're suicide psychos. And if you're playing melee, you just dash into these enemies all the time. It is hard to stay alive on Green Tree Arc Knives in late game with the amount of just BS modifiers that you encounter. Enemies can only get damaged by headshots. Good luck. In your arc knives, you have to deal with those psycho enemies that are constantly explode, and flying enemies, which the arc knives are really horrible at targeting. I don't know what's wrong with arc knives, but it just feels terrible to target anything that's 2 inches off of the ground. However, the damage on arc knives is very nice. You can infinite groundbreaker stack on them. You can go a ordnance build with grenades and infinite grenade spam on Green Tree, which is pretty good. So there is some versatility there. I just don't think it's quite on the tier of a blue Rafa or even red Rafa. Definitely his weakest tree, but not the weakest tree in the game. Hence why we put it in B. Next we get to Amon, and I'm just going to preface this by saying that Amon is pretty hard to rank, to be honest, because, for example, Onslaught, his red action skill, is pretty terrible. I don't like it. I don't think it's a good action skill. However, in Red Tree, you have Berserk, which is hands down one of the strongest skills in the game. You also have Dragon's Breath. You have Detonations. You have Electrical Fire. So there's a lot of really good things in Red Tree. However, the action skill holds it down. so much, in my opinion. And then you've also got like Blue Tree, which can go Ordnance, but in Blue Tree, you're most likely specking into Berserk, and Green Tree, you can go like Shotguns and Jacobs, like one-shot build, but you're also going to be specking into Red Tree for Berserk. So like, I still think Amon needs some like massive love to his trees. Like most of his capstones suck, and playing him as a action skill dealer still feels pretty bad to me. However, if you spec around into multiple of his trees, you can get some real big damage. So with that, let's start ranking him. I'm going to be putting Blue Amon into A tier. I probably put him there mainly because of Ordnance. Ordnance Amon is just really good. You get tons of damage. You can pick up any purple and do disgusting damage with it. Your survivability with all of the like overshield leech is good. You can now on like updated Stormbringer Amon, you get all of your like ordnance shots to get amped. I don't think Amon well, he's definitely the most comfortable ordnance dealer. You basically have infinite ammo. Tail of the Comet is crazy for dot damage. Plus, Blackout is not fixed yet. Blackout, once you get electrical dots plus those cryo dots from a big rocket launcher, you can one-shot most bosses in the game on Ordnance Amon, and you can do it while being tanky. Still think the skill tree needs some love because the capstones all feel like butt cheeks, but Blue Tree Amon, very, very good. And then we get to Red Tree Amon, where I'm probably going to do something that people aren't going to like here and put Red Tree Amon also in A tier. I think Red Tree Amon, if you're playing it as a onslaught melee build, feels pretty terrible. However, it's like undeniable that Berserk is one of the strongest skills or passives in the game. It infinitely stacks Groundbreaker. You can one-shot like tons of bosses with Groundbreaker, Berserk stacking, plus Electrical Fire for dot builds is huge. Wildfire Amon as a detonate status effect build is crazy, and detonations in the Red Tree basically allow you to take anything that's the strongest damage attack that you can do in the game. Like if you do a spread launcher and then detonate it, you're hitting, I was hitting 60 million explosions without like much setup on detonation Amon. If you want to push that with a Groundbreaker, you can start doing like 200 million damage for like a detonation Amon setup. So the damage is there, but playing in a way that like is probably not like the way that the tree is really built for, which is melee. Melee Red Tree, I would rate probably like into B, lower than Rafa. However, as a status effect detonation build, A is actually, or Red Tree is pretty good. And then we get to Green Tree. I hate Green Tree Amon. It's so bad. Your damage basically falls off after Freezy Axes. There's really no reason to go past that for the most part. I think Minion Green Tree Amon is worse than Treble Vex, to be honest. I spent a bunch of time specking into a full like axe build. I'd probably put it above Treble, but I put all of my points with the best class mods I could find into the Minion drones, and I watched 3 of them fight a single trash mob that had the Regenerator modifier on it for about a minute. These axes could not kill a single enemy with the regen modifier on UVH5 with like 10 out of 5 points into their damage. It was ridiculous. The thing with the axes is they run over to go hit an enemy, and then that enemy moves a step while they're doing their swinging animation, and then they miss, and then they run back over to go swing, and then they miss. Like, they just need an AI overhaul. They need way more attack range. Even if they were attacking and never missing, they still hit for like 4K damage. They just feel terrible, and I think it's easily one of the weakest trees in the game, to be honest. It's funny because I originally rated Green Tree Amon highly because I was using a Hot Slugger, and like the Hot Slugger is good on Amon, but it's like better on everyone else. So like Amon does have some interesting things for like using like a Jacob shotgun in that tree, but as like an intended minion drone build, I do think it's one of the weakest trees in the game. Now let's talk about cumulative power. Basically, this is, I took their trees, how we ranked them, and then assigned a number to each. So like, for example, if Rafa was the number 1 in S tier, that would be 12 points, and then Blue Vex would be 11 points, and then we put those all in a data sheet to get kind of our like cumulative ranking. This is not how strong or like what build is the strongest. It's how do all of their trees kind of match up. So this was how I kind of ranked them on launch, with Vex being slightly higher than Harlow, who is second place, Rafa being third, and then Amon being fourth for Endgame. And now, if we take a look, these were their points, like pretty close, and then Amon at 15. Now, how I like rank them is currently it looks like we've got Rafa winning, with both Red Tree and Blue Tree being super solid, Green Tree not being like the worst in the game. So Rafa gets a lot of points for two really, really strong trees. Harlow is just behind. I think Green Tree Rafa is stronger than Blue Tree Harlow. So that's really the only reason that Rafa is ahead here over Harlow, is I would take Green Tree Rafa over Blue Tree Harlow. And then Vex is just behind both of those. I think Green Tree Vex, as you saw in the tier list, is probably the strongest skill tree in the entire game. However, I think her Blue Tree and her Red Tree fall significantly behind comparatively to the Green Tree. Her build diversity isn't quite as strong, in my opinion. Then I actually rated Amon worse than I did on launch, even after the buffs. He did somehow lose a point there. I still think Amon is significantly behind the rest of the pack. That's not to say that Amon doesn't have strong builds. I posted tons of strong builds for him. However, I think he's just lacking some of the like crazy power in his single trees. As you've seen with my build guides, almost all of them spec very heavy into two different trees, and almost never do I actually go deep enough to get capstones, just because I think his power is a whole lot more spread out. It's not as concentrated. His capstones are pretty bad, and his damage is a little bit more spread out than some of the other characters. So that's not to say that he doesn't have strong builds. Just I don't think his power is as concentrated in his skill trees as some of the other characters. I would feel a whole lot better putting 49 points into Red Tree Rafa or Green Tree Vex, or Green Tree Harlow or Red Tree Harlow than I would putting 49 points into Green Tree or 49 points into Red or 49 points into Blue. So just my opinions there. And then we get the leveling experience, which I'm kind of shocked by, actually. It looks like all of the characters got 19 points for leveling. Once again, I didn't like plan this. It's just how the math worked out for their numbers, which I think is pretty funny. And then Harlow with the best leveling. I think Harlow Green Tree and Harlow Red Tree are both pretty great for leveling. I rate them very highly, where the other characters all have a solid leveling option. I think you have a solid leveling option on all of the characters. So, yeah, can't really go wrong with leveling. I do think Harlow has a little bit more options, but in terms of leveling, Red Tree Rafa, Blue Tree Vex, Red Tree Harlow, and Blue Tree Amon are some of my favorites. And so that is our leveling tree. Guys, that's going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. Once again, these are just my opinions and my personal experience from playing the characters. My opinion is not any more right than anyone else's. This is just how I personally feel about the characters. If you feel differently, that's totally fine. We can have a conversation in the comments. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you found it informative and helpful. And I hope Gearbox takes a look at this and kind of sees that, honestly, even after the buffs, Amon still, in my opinion, still needs some serious love. So, guys, with that, I'll catch y'all in the next one. Take care. Peace.
Attention shoppers! In 2015, Superstore opened its doors, giving us a working-class sitcom set in the ominous aisles of a store not entirely unlike Walmart. We saw an expansive cast from various lives and backgrounds, all deal with bizarre customers, uncaring corporate overlords, and the constant struggle of surviving on a pittance. Superstore was a network sitcom in an era where networks were on the decline, and its success on streaming platforms reflects where the market was and is heading. It was also a showcase of how real issues impact ordinary working class folks, giving audiences an understanding of the lives of the people who make our societies function. The creation of Superstore starts with writer Justin Spitzer. Having first found writing work on Scrubs and Committed, Spitzer found major success writing for the American version of The Office. After The Office ended, Spitzer worked with Ruben Fleischer's production company, The District, to develop an idea for a new sitcom. Spitzer described his interest in workplace sitcoms, saying, "I think I'm always in development looking for small, real, relatable ideas. And I like workplace shows because it's an opportunity to bring very different types of people together, and they have to be together whether they like it or not." The idea of placing the series in a superstore specifically, though, came to him completely by chance.
My father-in-law was an attorney at a firm that at the time was litigating a class action suit against Walmart, and he was talking to me about it. And I was like, man, that's a show I really would rather be writing than whatever the hell I was writing at the time.
The pilot script came together well enough that when it was shown to NBC, they thought it was one of the strongest pilot scripts they had seen that year, and they picked it up in January of 2015. The original title for the series was The Greatest Love Story Ever Told, which Spitzer used because even though he had hoped to just do a show about people working at a store, he thought adding a romantic element would help sell the idea. However, after several romantic comedies failed to find an audience on network TV at the time, it was NBC that suggested a name change, eventually turning the title of the series into Superstore. Fun bit of trivia is that while Jonah and Amy are often considered the main love story in the series, the original pilot was actually going to use that as a mislead, and the audience wouldn't know what the greatest love story was going to be. With the pilot picked up, casting began for the series. An interesting choice for the casting process is that very few of them had identities attached to them during casting. This created the opportunity for a wider variety of actors to audition from a variety of different backgrounds and identity groups, with emphasis placed on acting talent and chemistry with other actors. Once cast, the identity of the actor would then inform the character. A great example of that is the series' star, America Ferrera, who played Amy Sosa. At the time, Ferrera had recently starred in Ugly Betty for 4 seasons, where she was the first Latina woman to win a Golden Globe for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series. Spitzer said in an interview with Vox, "Every year, America is someone people want. When her name came up, I didn't even think it was possible she'd want to do it. I figured, please, she hasn't agreed to do a show in 4 years. She's not going to want to do a sitcom. So we kind of took a flyer and went out, and were very, very pleasantly surprised when she agreed to do it." What drew Ferrera to the role, in addition to the strength of the script, was how so many of the characters were written without assigned identities.
Amy was the first role I was ever offered that wasn't written as a Latina. But when you spent your entire career only getting roles that have been written into one specific box, it's actually a moment where you go, whoa, I just got offered something that wasn't, written as the firecracker.
When America Ferrera was cast as Amy, that character then inherited Ferrera's Honduran heritage, something that wasn't part of the character when she was initially conceived. This is an example of how the identities of actors would shape the characters. In an interview, Ferrera described Amy saying, "With Amy, we make all sorts of assumptions because she works at a superstore, she's Latina, and had a child when she was young. Real life is complicated. The first thing we see is never the real story. The show sets up everything to be turned upside down. We are defining those assumptions and expectations. I think that's the subtle magic of our show." Amy is the overworked and underappreciated backbone of the Ozark Highlands Cloud9 Superstore, somehow holding it together while working with fools and at the same time raising a daughter home and living with a husband who she married a bit too quickly.
I need this for work, driving, doorknobs.
We just need to put it in a cold, airtight container. We'll get it to the hospital. They'll reattach it. It's easy.
Promise?
The other lead on the show, and the only other role directly offered to an actor, was Jonah Sims, played by Ben Feldman. Feldman had already appeared in several hits, including Mad Men and Silicon Valley. Before being offered the role, Feldman had been working on the show A to Z, which had been canceled by NBC. And even though he was against doing another comedy, particularly one on the network where his show was just canceled, the strength of the script for Superstore won him over. Spitzer described pitching the character to Feldman saying, A to Z was very heavily a romantic comedy, and the pilot of Superstore felt more like a romantic comedy than I think I ever meant the show to be. So one thing I had to tell him was, no, this is not a show about whether Jonah and Amy are going to get together and what beautiful sweet thing is Jonah going to do. Basically that the show would allow him to be a more rounded comedic character than that. Feldman described it, saying, you can ask anybody that went through this most recent pilot season in Hollywood and they'll tell you, this was the best comedy. So what drew me to the role was the hopes that I could crowbar my way onto the show somehow. Jonah is the viewer's guide into the world of Cloud9, a business school dropout taking a step into the world of retail at a large store in St. Louis.
There are people who do nothing, and there are people who do something. And I am one of those people. The something group.
Colton Dunn was cast as Garrett McNeil, Cloud9's cynical announcement reader. Dunn had made a few appearances on television before Superstore, notably as part of the animal control team on Parks and Recreation, though Dunn had largely distinguished himself as a writer, particularly for the series Key and Peele, where he was twice nominated for an Emmy. The character of Garrett was written as being in a wheelchair in the original script before casting, but there was difficulty finding a disabled actor who was right for the role. Eventually, Dunn was cast, and it was debated as to whether or not the character should be taken out of the wheelchair, as Dunn is able-bodied. Dunn discussed this in an interview.
But I think after thinking about it, and talking to a lot of people, I felt like it was important to have that character represented. And I wanted to show the diversity of that group of people.
Garrett is, of course, far more than his disability. His sarcastic sense of humor hides a kindness that has been worn down after years of working at Cloud9.
How exactly did a non-Vitamix Splendor put you in a coma?
That's a very offensive question to ask a disabled person.
Lauren Ash was cast as assistant manager Dina Fox. Originally from Belleville, Ontario, Ash started her career as a comedian and appeared on several Canadian TV shows. Her appearance on Superstore would be her highest profile role so far. Prior to working on Superstore, Ash had similar working experience at a Canadian retail chain.
I worked in one of these stores in high school in Canada. It's called Zellers. No Canadians, okay.
Originally, the character of Dina was meant to be very harsh and uncompromising. In an interview, Justin Spitzer explained, I wanted her to be a hard ass that you would find likable over a long period of time. Lauren Ash is an amazing actress, and Dina became likable a lot faster. Ash has said in several interviews that she had absolute confidence in getting the role, as she envisioned the character very clearly in her mind, modeled off a character that she had been using on stage at Second City. Dina is supremely confident and a stickler for the rules. She's a bit off-putting at first, but she's a fierce friend and a lover of birds.
Look, I'm a Christian too, but in these four walls, my Bible is the employee code of conduct.
We all thank you for it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Another of the few exceptions of a character written with a certain identity in mind was Mateo, though the original idea of making him Hispanic completely vanished when Nico Santos got the role, which is probably when Mateo got the last name Liwanag. The Filipino actor and comedian had success as a stand-up comic, but it was his appearance on Superstore that would be his first major role. Santos's casting didn't just change the character's ethnicity, though.
When I read the script and I was reading Mateo's lines, I was all like, this is something a shady queen would say. So that's kind of just how I interpreted the character, and thank God they were like, well, turn it into a shady queen.
Santos is very visibly queer, and it was very important to him to have the character Mateo embrace that.
There was a very long time, like in the 90s, where gay characters would like had to be like masculine and white and all that. And I'm like, listen, I'm brown, I'm queer. I want most of the characters I play to be unapologetically queer, because you know what? Time's up.
In addition to being unapologetically queer, Mateo also has the distinction of being undocumented, something revealed at the beginning of the second season. It was that piece that Santos describes as completing the character in his mind. In an interview, he said, "We've added an in-depth layer that explains a lot of his nature and why he's so acidic, why he's so hyper-competitive. The stakes are very high for him, and that's where his soul venom comes from." Mateo is the ambitious new hire who joins Cloud9 at the same time as Jonah. Jonah's easygoing attitude was in stark contrast to the far more intense Mateo.
I hung up everything that was in the dressing rooms, and I organized it by style, color, size, and relevance of designer.
Joining the crew as another sales associate was Nicole Sakura, who played Cheyenne Lee. Originally going by the stage name Nicole Bloom, Sakura had appeared in a few projects before Superstore, notably the American version of the series Shameless. After she got the role, she came up with the idea of applying for a job at Target so she could get some real-world experience.
Such a great opportunity to really like dig into a character, and I wanted to know what it was like to work at a Target. So I went and applied, and they were not interested in me.
Nico Santos went through the same experience of getting rejected by Target, which kind of foreshadows how Cheyenne and Mateo would become fast friends as the series progressed. When we first meet Cheyenne, she's a pregnant teenager considering a future with her boyfriend Beau, played by Johnny Pemberton. Although Cheyenne certainly comes across as naive, she's a decent person who really grows into an unexpected authority figure by the end of the series.
Thank you for shopping at Cloud9. Oh, I put my phone in his bag.
The principal cast in the first season was rounded out with Mark McKinney playing Glenn Sturgis. McKinney is almost certainly best known for his time in the Canadian sketch comedy troupe The Kids in the Hall, which had a series that ran from 1988 to 1995. Following that, he spent some time on Saturday Night Live and would go on to appear in numerous TV and film projects. McKinney decided to add a bit of a twist to the character while auditioning by giving him a unique voice he had used in the past.
The second I just sort of upped it into this range, all this, it's like it went from black and white to color.
Glenn is a gentle Midwestern guy, deeply religious and very nice. Much like other characters refuse to be reduced to a quirk, Glenn's religious personality reflects his naivete, but also his kindness and generosity.
Balloons are like our souls. They want to go up but can't. And when you pop them, they scream.
Superstore was very much an ensemble cast, so much so that guest stars would recur throughout the series' run, in time having storylines of their own. Kaliko Kauahi as Sandra Kalani would eventually become a full cast member in Season 5, and over 20 other actors would grow to have recurring roles over the show's run. Although some of these actors were present in the first season, it was the later seasons that would give them the opportunity to further develop their characters. The location for filming Superstore would prove a special challenge. Giant stores like Walmart and Target are known for their cavernous interiors, often bigger than the typical set for a sitcom, and stocking an entire store would far exceed the budget for a humble network series. For the pilot, they found a Kmart to fill in, but after the pilot was shot, that Kmart became unavailable, so they had to create a similar-looking space on their own. Justin Spitzer explained in an interview, "We have an amazing production designer, Michael Gallenberg, and he and his crew made this phenomenal-looking store here on the Universal lot. It feels super real, and I think there have been often times when we're working on something in the writer's room and we're a little blocked, and we'll just walk around the set and look for ideas and ways to interact with the environment, which is so helpful." The set of Superstore uses a number of tricks, such as mirrors and giant photographs, to create the illusion of it being a much bigger space than it actually is. Superstore's expansive cast and seemingly gigantic set created the real impression that this store was a real, functioning place, filled with actual employees. The attention to detail was so fine that even the cash registers had working scanners. Actors would also mention in interviews that visitors were especially delighted to walk onto a set that felt a lot like walking into a real store. Superstore was picked up as a series in May of 2015. Although it was meant to be part of NBC's winter 2016 lineup starting on January 4th, the network decided to air 2 episodes of the series early, so Superstore opened its door for the first time on November 30th, 2015. The opening of Superstore's first episode gives us a montage of the various customers that shop at Cloud9, a big box retail chain. This particular branch is located in St. Louis, Missouri. These visual gags would be a staple for the series, though originally they were just the show's creator, Justin Spitzer, trying to come up with plot ideas. He said in an interview, "It also occurred to me that we were going to be in this one space all the time, and if we want to show the passage of time, I'm going to have to go to an exterior shot. How many times do you want to see the outside of the same store again and again and again? So I thought that was a great way to suggest the passage of time, and I can use it for freebie jokes, and I can kind of pepper them throughout the show." We meet Amy as she sells an engagement ring of dubious quality, and when she goes on break, she runs into the newly hired Jonah.
I know. I don't seem like the kind of person who would work in a place like this.
Yeah.
Of course, Jonah soon learns that Amy is his coworker.
Little tip. Don't let the other workers here know how much better than them you are. They hate that.
And you might have noticed Amy's name tag reads Ramona. She changes it in each episode.
I just don't like random strangers using my name like we're buddies.
Right, like how hookers don't like to be kissed on the lips.
As the episode moves along, we're introduced to the various characters of Cloud9 and establish some key dynamics. Assistant manager Dina and manager Glenn don't get along. Garrett is an early friend to Jonah, and Amy is a sort of mother figure to Cheyenne. The main contrast here, though, is between Jonah and Amy. Jonah brings a wide-eyed sense of wonder that is deflated by Amy's pragmatic realism.
That doesn't mean we can't have a little fun at work, does it? Or try and find some moments of beauty in the everyday?
Wait, I'm sorry. Did you really just use the phrase moments of beauty?
Even a plastic bag can be breathtaking.
Wow, that really blew my mind.
As we get to know Amy, though, we see there's a bit more to her than being a downer.
I stock these glow stars every single year for the back to school sale. Tomorrow is going to be just like today. And I know that because today is just like yesterday. So sometimes it's just kind of hard to find those moments of beauty.
Cheyenne's boyfriend, Beau, the guy buying the ring from Amy in the first scene, makes a big splash with his second attempt at a proposal to Cheyenne. Dina, thinking it's a robbery, decides to kill the lights.
What is this?
Moment of beauty?
It's a lovely visual, though you do wonder how Jonah pulled this off on his first day. The episode includes subtle hints of a budding romance between Jonah and Amy, even though we learn at the end of the episode that Amy is married. But more than the clear attraction between the two of them, their philosophies will underscore much of the themes of this show. How hope for a better world is tempered by the reality of the one we're currently living in, and where that cynicism comes from. The moment of beauty Jonah offers, as simple as it may be, creates the opportunity to dream for something bigger. Think that there's something more than the drudgery of daily existence, an existence that tells us it's the way it's always been and the way it always will be. But on the other hand, it's not as though Amy never had dreams herself. It's Jonah's first day at Cloud9, while Amy has been there for over 10 years. Her concern for Cheyenne, who she sees herself in, reveals that she has hope for other people to avoid the mistakes she's made. It's wonderful she can do that for another person, but it's a shame she doesn't have that same hope for herself. A small speech from Garrett about Pandora's box, funnily enough, sets up the themes for the series.
There was only one thing left inside: hope. I wonder what will be left inside of this box. Could it be Grace? I hope not. If you're Grace's parents, please pick her up at customer service.
If Jonah is offering hope, Amy is offering grace. The pilot also helped establish the look of the series, opting for a style that made the viewer feel like they were watching the events of each episode unfold without it turning into a documentary.
He established these long lens looks where you could, like as the viewer, you could just be someone standing in the store looking past two aisles overhearing a conversation.
The series also made room for a lot of improv, particularly in break room scenes. Mark McKinney and Lauren Ash were known for their tendency to improv with one another, something they did in the pilot episode.
I pray for you, Dina.
Pray for you too, Glenn.
I'm praying right now.
Praying so hard.
I'm praying harder than you. I know how.
Come on, what's wrong with you? Garrett, give me a beat or something. Okay, the finger of the devil is poking through the foam.
Cry, Ezekiel, cry it out.
Although this would be the only episode filmed in an actual store, the look would remain pretty consistent throughout the rest of the series, and the characters would grow from the firm foundations that were established in this episode, making this a pilot with much of the series already shaped and ready to go on into many episodes in the future.
Cloud9's lawyer will also be present. He advises we answer every question honestly, but try and downplay their liabilities.
One of the clear mandates of Superstore is to tell real stories about regular working-class people. While it's certainly through the lens of a sitcom, so the characters are silly, the issues and concerns they have are typically more grounded. In an interview, executive producer Gabe Miller said, "Having our characters talking about what people in the real world are talking about at the moment makes it feel more current and real. When an issue comes up, we try to consider it from all sides and have all sides represented." America Ferrera also spoke to that, saying,
Everybody comes from such different backgrounds. It's not just diversity of skin color, diversity of race, it's diversity of life experience.
Although Superstore would gain a reputation as a show that tackled issues, it never quite came across as preachy. A great example is in the third episode, Shots and Salsa, where Amy expresses concerns over another worker playing into Latino stereotypes to convince people to try some salsa at a sample stand.
Suggesting that maybe you don't need to resort. Hola, señorita.
Things escalate when Mateo joins in, admittedly giving himself an extremely cool new name.
Soy Jose. Jose was born in a small village near Oaxaca.
I was actually born in Toronto, for the record. In another show, Amy would find a way to teach Carmen and Mateo a lesson about how racist caricatures are bad, and we'd all feel special for defeating racism. But in Superstore, Amy ends up using a racist caricature herself to make her point, and that instead leads us to seeing how a big company like Cloud9 tackles this issue with a video.
Racism. You hear a lot about it, but what is it, really? Over the next 60 minutes, we are going.
When Amy finds out proceeds from the salsa goes to help orphans, she decides to play into the stereotype to start moving more jars. When Carmen sees Amy's performance, Amy is forced to confront her hypocrisy and acknowledge Carmen was just doing what her job expected from her. We don't need Superstore to tell us that racism is bad, and that's not really what this episode is about, at least not primarily. It's about how working class people often have jobs that feel degrading and can have a negative social impact that is out of their control. Both Glenn and Dina, as management, encourage Amy and Carmen to play into stereotypes to sell the salsa. While this does feed into something ugly, it's not exactly how it's understood by the people who fuel that system. As we can see, the reactions from the customers is that they respond to authenticity, only that their vision of what authentic is happens to be a stereotype. There are many failures here that are simply beyond the control of Amy or Carmen. It's a sophisticated look at racism in the workplace, not presenting it as the product of some obviously evil guy in charge, but rather a system of variables that includes well-meaning people, an indifferent corporation, and an ignorant public. And in order for a working-class person to survive, sometimes that might involve choosing to turn a blind eye to perpetuating a negative stereotype. It's not that anyone is right or wrong, but rather that sometimes these issues don't present themselves into neat little boxes where we can take a righteous stand against an obvious evil. Many episodes in the first season had a tendency to end without any real feeling of resolution. But in this case, the lack of resolution is a great explanation for why Amy feels so disillusioned by her job. It's easy to judge someone like her for giving up on her principles, but after working at a place for more than 10 years, how easy is it to keep fighting every battle, especially when you seem to be losing so many of them? A better question to ask is, how does a workplace do this to its employees? Although the creators set out to have a show that wasn't trying to make any specific statement, many of the episodes still very much read otherwise, something America Ferrera noticed in the script for the very first episode.
I remember feeling like, oh, there's really something super special and smart and funny and warm and did have something to say, even though Justin didn't want it to have anything to say.
A lot of this comes from the fact that the show itself is an attempt to tap into the culture of that time in a way that reflected how people were feeling. When the things people experience in their lives become politically charged topics, to depict them at all can be seen as a form of commentary. Part of depicting ordinary working class people involved bringing many different types of those people together, something you will likely see every day at giant big box stores. The deliberate choice by the series bridges the gap between different kinds of people and experiences. One thing Superstore does well by bringing in so many diverse people together realistically is that it shows us, more or less, we can all get along. And when there is any discord, as there always will be in large groups of people, it's a product of personality clashes rather than trying to suggest certain kinds of people simply can't get along. If there is a villain to be found in the series, it's almost certainly the Cloud9 corporate office, which often hands down impersonal mandates or enforces policies that make life needlessly complicated for the workers we know and love. We get plenty of examples of that in the first season, though one of the better ones is in the episode All Nighter, which begins with everyone having to update the store's signs.
They say the old signs were this pale, outdated color called Glossy Dolphin. The new ones are a bold, exciting color called Glossy Dolphin B.
In this episode, we also find out how Glenn ended up working at Cloud9.
My family used to own a hardware store. Sturgis and Sons? Well, until Cloud9 moved in up the street, and then a month later, we lost everything.
As everyone tries to finish out their work, the store's lights go out and the doors are locked because they're controlled by the corporate computer, so everyone is stuck inside. When Glenn tries to find a way to override the computer, he finds memos that show what corporate's real concerns are.
Union buzzwords.
How to spot a union.
Anti-union activity.
What to do if you hear the word union.
Reporting union activity.
And the typically easygoing Glenn rages against the machine.
And sometimes the folks in charge don't treat me like I'm a human being with feelings. I mean, where do they get off? Keep us late and locked in the dark, all in service of the bottom line.
Yeah.
Although the Cloud9 employees have all done bad things throughout the series, often hurting one another, corporate never really gets a chance to redeem itself, in part because it's not actually a character. Rather, it's a giant system that demands these people work, often doing ridiculous things, in the hunt to increase corporate profits. As the first season progresses, there is a growing sense of the injustice of it all, and gradually the workers begin to get fed up. In the finale to the first season, we get the episode Labor. In it, Cheyenne is wondering what she'll do once she gives birth since Cloud9 doesn't offer paid maternity leave.
I can't go home. I need the hours, for this little girl.
Did you guys know that in every other first world nation, paid maternity leave is just automatic?
Well, no, you are not going to forward us another article.
When Jonah and Amy try to plead Cheyenne's case to corporate, a casual reference to unions leads to things spiraling out of control.
Typically, their employees would be in unions.
I'm transferring now. Please hold.
What are you doing? Why would you say that?
We've got Howard, Sue, Cheryl, Keith, Guillermo, Renee, and Alan here. How you doing? Hi.
The store gets a visit from a union buster named Steve, played by Dan Bugatinsky.
Does anyone here know who I am?
Oh, I know. A union buster.
Steve does nothing to help anybody, aside from corporate, while Jonah encourages everyone to voice their complaints, which include a lack of benefits, no raises, and other challenges of working at Cloud9.
It's like we don't have any leverage. Maybe we should form a union.
We couldn't even agree on a theme for our summer barbecue. Ended up being 1980s Arabian Nights under the sea Harry Potter.
In the meantime, Cheyenne gives birth. With Cheyenne not getting any maternity leave, Glenn decides to suspend her for 6 weeks with pay. So Cloud9 fires him.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, they let me go.
Although Glenn has been the mouthpiece for some bad policy ideas in the past, he's otherwise been a pretty decent guy, often trying to do what he can for his workers so they have a better experience on the job. And what he did for Cheyenne was obviously very kind. His firing is the event needed to get Amy on board with Jonah's plan. And with Amy on board and Glenn fired, support builds in the store and it leads to a walkout. One of the exceptions is Dina, who decides to scab.
But rest assured, Cloud9 will be fine without you.
It's a very cool ending to the season and presents these characters in a heroic light. It's interesting that Glenn being fired was the straw that broke the camel's back. He was the one good face of management, and him getting fired creates feelings of frustration and anger when the one good thing they had was taken away from everybody. Jonah's arrival was a huge impetus for the strike, since the discussion over benefits and unions came from him. But Amy taking charge reveals how her deep connection with everyone in the store, as well as Glenn's, is necessary to motivate a group of people to make a stand for change. Ferreira described it saying, "In the course of the first season, you go from Amy never expecting anything to change to accidentally leading a walkout, which she would have never imagined herself. Even though I don't think every character has to be out there changing the world or going after great things to be on an interesting track, I do think there is a piece of Amy's journey, however small it may be, that is about awakening to something she lost a long time ago."
America is #1. Because it's first in the world.
That's an airtight argument, though.
The response to Superstore was a bit of a mixed bag from critics. After its debut, many of the reviews offered mild criticism or tepid praise. The word potential did get thrown around a lot, in addition to many comparisons to The Office, no doubt due to its creator having worked on that show for so many years. Over the years, this would change as the series eventually became a favorite among critics. It's a bit more difficult to measure how many people were watching in their homes, though, because TV ratings have become increasingly less relevant. Just a decade before Superstore's premiere, a high rating gave you a good idea of how many people were tuning in each night. But in 2015, streaming was becoming a bigger part of the market, and that's where Superstore tended to find most of its success. Whatever the numbers may have been, NBC did have some faith in the series. As a sign of that faith, they renewed Superstore for a second season the day after its finale aired. But before getting back to that walkout cliffhanger, they were instead given a special time slot where they could air an episode after the 2016 Summer Olympics. Another example of how committed NBC was to supporting the series. This time slot was incredibly valuable, and it ended up being the most watched broadcast episode of Superstore, with nearly 10 million people tuning in. To avoid having to deal with the walkout cliffhanger, the Olympics episode takes place sometime during Season 1, indicated by the fact that Cheyenne has yet to give birth, so we can tell that this happens before the walkout episode. One interesting fact about this episode is that parts of it had to be approved by an organization representing the Olympics. For example, one of the plot lines had Cecily Strong playing an Olympian who was visiting the store, and a change to the story was requested. Spitzer described the process in an interview, saying, "Originally, we had wanted Dina to be suspicious that Cecily Strong's Missy Jones was on steroids. Big no from the Olympics. We'd also planned for the episode to build to a big confrontation between Missy and Amy, who'd grown up idolizing her, but that version portrayed the Olympian as a more negative character. The episode is perhaps most notable for revealing that Mateo is undocumented.
I went to the green card store personally with my grandmother.
The green card store?
Yeah, they sell green cards and knockoff handbags and bootleg Spider-Man DVDs.
This was not the original plan with Mateo, Spitzer explained. Before this point, it had never even occurred to us to say that Mateo was undocumented. It really just came out of pitching on the Glenn story, that he would start out with this knee-jerk sentiment that America is number one in everything, and that would conflict with Mateo's Filipino pride. Then we wanted to find a way to flip the dynamic, so that Glenn would start pushing multiculturalism, while Mateo became all rah-rah USA, at least outwardly. So that's how we came up with the idea that Mateo might learn he was undocumented and then start pushing too hard to cover it up. The Olympics episode also brought us the debut of Kelly Schumann as Justine. But since Justine is the worst, I'm going to put off talking about her until later.
Sing Car Wash with me immediately. Work it. Fail! The vocals don't come in for another 10 measures. Also, you have the worst voice I've ever heard.
Will you please take off that stupid fedora?
It completes the look.
You look like Carmen Sandiego.
The ramifications of the walkout at the end of season 1 is difficult to discuss without also talking about Jonah and Amy's relationship. Both of them were instrumental to staging that walkout, and it symbolizes the connection between these two characters. Lots of sound and energy, but not entirely focused. To back up a little bit, some of the things we learn about Jonah and Amy is that their lives have not turned out like they expected. Jonah flunked out of business school, and Amy only intended her Cloud9 job to be for a few months until she found out she was pregnant and got married.
And so I stopped at this random store in St. Louis and saw they were hiring and...
I wonder sometimes what it would have been like if I had made other choices.
As Jonah and Amy, Ben Feldman and America Ferrera have a very natural chemistry together. Feldman described it in an interview saying, "I think America is an incredible actress. I would be surprised to see her on screen with someone where there was not chemistry because she listens, she's smart, she's a great actress, and you just kind of fall into chemistry like that." Amy and Jonah do have a number of barriers between them getting together. In an interview, Justin Spitzer described how he thought there were 2 reasons people don't get together in sitcoms. They either fight too much, like Sam and Diane on Cheers, or there's a person in the way, like Jim and Pam on The Office. For Superstore, he decided to combine those 2 dynamics. Because of that, he thought he created a more genuine will they, won't they scenario, as opposed to other shows which he considers more of a when will they. I think the Jonah and Amy pairing goes quite well with the general dissatisfaction everyone has with Cloud9, especially seen in the walkout episode. It's something that requires Jonah and Amy to work together, but much like how their flirting in season 1 never amounts to more than that, they don't really know what to do with the worker energy that is activated by their walkout. In the season 2 premiere, titled Strike, we can very clearly see that no one knows what they're doing.
We did it!
Yeah.
So do we just go home now?
Corporate sends Jeff, played by Michael Boonen, to negotiate with the workers. Amy only wants Glenn to get his job back at first, but corporate wanting a written apology makes her start demanding more.
We're supposed to give corporate a little something. That's hilarious, because you fired our boss for giving Cheyenne maternity leave. You don't give us overtime, you don't give us health insurance, and we're not allowed to vape in the store. Myrtle's got a...
Maybe not as high up on the priority list.
The strike starts to flounder as other movements try to latch on to their energy, and Jeff calls in a bunch of workers from another store to cross the picket line. As everyone feels like they're going to be replaced, people begin to abandon the strike. Although Glenn does get his job back, not much else is gained, and the strike runs out of steam.
You know, just because we go inside doesn't mean it's over. The fight will go on. This was just the first punch.
So... to be continued?
To be continued.
What was so great about this episode was it showed how important organizing is in labor movements, and how the energy to mobilize can't be taken for granted. Cloud9 Corporate was clearly ready for a moment like this in a way the workers weren't, and that lack of experience is the problem. But when the episode ends, we can see that, instead of just rolling over, Amy and Jonah haven't given up entirely, and there's still the spark that something might change. In a similar way, Amy and Jonah's romantic tension is a lot of energy going nowhere, while a tiny little spark continues to suggest something might change there too. In this case, it's not a lack of experience in dating and romance that prevents them from getting together, it's Amy's struggling marriage. Neither Jonah or Amy can allow themselves to even consider hooking up, so they don't know what to do with all this energy between them. After the strike, Amy and Jonah's crusade to improve their workplace takes more of a backseat to the romantic tension between the two characters.
Some people think that you wear a wig, and some people think that you have a crush on Amy, and some people think that you're a Sea Org, whatever that is.
Throughout seasons 2 and 3, Amy and Jonah's relationship woes become a greater emphasis in the series than leading another walkout. Even so, the show was never shy to remind the audience just how little Cloud9 cares about its employees.
Speaking of corporate, this memo just came through. This time of year, many of us suffer from seasonal affective disorder. Cloud9 cares. This memo clears parent company of any liability for employee suicide.
Cloud9 really does care.
Season 2 and 3 include Amy getting a divorce and Jonah briefly dating the new employee Kelly, played by Kelly Stables. But in spite of being knocked up again by Adam, Amy still makes a move on Jonah, and the two of them hook up at the end of season 3. This sex scene is actually a very powerful bit of symbolism. This episode, Town Hall, is about Cloud9 holding a town hall meeting where workers are being given the chance to express their grievances to the company CEO, with some topics being forbidden, as seen on the whiteboard next to the new district manager Lori, played by Jennifer Irwin, who replaced Jeff after he quit earlier in the season.
Try and remember this event is going to be live streamed, so let's try to avoid anything controversial, okay?
The off-limit topics include compensations, CEO bonus, benefits, maternity leave, hours, and a bunch of other things that happened in the previous episodes that workers might be upset about. In other words, the Cloud9 crew can ask their boss questions, but none that have anything to do with actually improving their circumstances. To fight the powers that be by digging up some dirt on corporate, Amy and Jonah unite once again, uncovering how Cloud9 falsified performance write-ups to justify firing older employees. Unemployed Jeff confirms it.
There was a mandate to write up any employee over the age of 70 to give us a pretext for firing them. Okay, it didn't matter for what. That's just the corporate culture over there. It's the mindset. Anything's justified as long as it saves $1. Believe me, if there was something I can do to change that, I would.
Well, maybe there is.
Jeff crumbles when he's offered a job in Chicago at corporate headquarters.
If I could ever persuade you to come back to Cloud9, we could definitely use a guy like you in Chicago.
Chicago?
But working on this project is what gets Jonah and Amy back together, hence the hooking up. Unaware that their moment is caught on a hidden camera that was originally meant to broadcast Jeff, exposing the truth. Everyone watching people have sex on camera in an episode that was more about corporate being completely terrible really wraps up this show's dynamic. They're having sex at work, but really, all the employees there are getting screwed by their employer. With Amy and Jonah safely together, the series has more time to explore the struggle of workers through them. In seasons 4 and 5, we see a much stronger return to the Cloud9 employees standing up to corporate, and it begins with Amy's maternity leave, or rather, her lack of maternity leave.
I have slept 90 minutes in 3 days. The lining of my uterus is coming out in clumps. I have hemorrhoids so big that my doctor looked at my and said, "Whoa, have you ever had a doctor look at your and say that?" I am wearing frozen diapers so that my doesn't fall out, okay?
Amy's situation, painful as it is, isn't entirely foreign to other workers who had to give birth while working a job that didn't give them the chance to take time off.
And you think you're creating this ridiculous sitcom scenario, and then the response from so many viewers was like, yeah, that's what happened to me. Like, you know, people were like, well, I was laughing until I was crying, and then I couldn't stop crying because it just reminded me of when I had to go back to work days after giving birth to my child.
A few episodes later, we see Jonah and Amy go to a manager's conference, and while there, we get a better idea of what that particular group thinks of low-level employees.
Ask me, floor workers are barely worth $15 a week.
Don't even get me started. Pay us more, give us more hours. I'm on food stamps. It's endless.
It does make one wonder how corporate chooses people to elevate and then showers them with fancy gifts to express their thanks. Much in the same way Jeff was convinced to turn against the employees at Cloud9 by offering him a job. While at the party, Jonah suggests Amy do something to improve her position.
Maybe you should be a manager.
Yeah, right?
Why not?
As Amy goes through the management training program and Glenn considers taking a demotion to spend more time with his newborn, an opening seems to be appearing at the Ozark Highlands Cloud 9, an opening that just happens to be perfect for Amy.
How's the district manager world? Hashtag DM life, right?
I'm still doing some physical therapy from when you ran me over with the golf cart.
Yep. Yeah.
We see her embrace the dark side to get ahead in her career after she catches her district manager doing cocaine.
Okay, yes, I am blackmailing you. If you don't give me the job, I will call corporate and tell them that you are a huge cokehead.
This represents a turn for Amy, as being part of management slowly starts to alienate her from her coworkers. As the season progresses, we see Amy continue her life as a boss, slowly turning her into what she hated.
We have cameras in the break room?
Yeah, it's hidden in the smoke alarm in the corner.
Is that legal?
It's in a gray area. Do you want to hear what they're saying?
You have audio? Is that legal?
Do you want to hear what they're saying?
We would have more empathy for Amy because she's always been presented as the normal, responsible one in the series. But that's not the reason she got the job. She got it via blackmail. And the longer we see her as a manager, the more we see her behave in ways that show us how that job changes someone. When corporate starts cutting back on hours, Amy and Jonah try to get them back by posting negative things about the store on social media, hoping to convince corporate to approve more hours so they can fix up the store. Eventually it backfires though, and when corporate shows up to find out who's been posting the images, Sandra takes the fall. And basking in that moment, she decides to rise up.
We're gonna stand up.
That's right.
And we're gonna stay strong.
There she is.
Yeah, that's it.
And we need to unionize.
When Amy learns that a store in her district might be converted to a distribution center, she suddenly finds herself on the side of busting the union.
All we have to do is keep her from talking about unions.
Yes.
What?
It just feels weird. Isn't that like literally union busting?
No! We're just trying to stop one lonely, desperate lunatic from running her mouth and costing everybody their jobs.
We're the good guys.
I guess.
We just want Sandra to do what's best for her fellow workers. Or else. As soon as I said it, I heard it.
Because of his connection to Amy, Jonah takes her side in the fight, and we see him selling out his principles too.
Most of us have no education, no skills, and are just generally terrible. No offense. So maybe we should just be happy with what we've got, you know? Because for most of us, this is as good as it's ever gonna get.
But when it comes down to which store is getting closed, it doesn't have anything to do with the union busting Amy was doing. But it's once again Amy using the blackmail card on Lori.
I had 5 Cokes on my way over here, and I've tried to kick the habit, but I just can't seem to do it. I'm a Coke fiend.
It's fine.
Lori, you were saying?
Bellridge. I would close Bellridge.
With a labor organizer brought in to talk to the employees, it looked like the workers were closer than ever to finally starting a union. And that realization has an effect on Jonah and helps steer him away from the dark side. But what hits him even harder is the change he sees in Amy.
You're the one who said to keep the union thing under control, and now you want me to give you names? Who are you?
And that's what convinces Jonah to sign the union card.
I'm in. Let's do this.
What makes this dynamic so compelling is that neither Amy or Jonah are entirely in the wrong. Amy is privy to a whole set of corporate concerns that change her understanding of keeping the store open, and Jonah realizes that something as fragile as the energy of the workers can take years to get back. They both think they're doing what's best for the store, but both of them can't be right. Amy's proximity to corporate power is starting to change her, and we can see how easy it is when she's given an excuse to reject her principles that seems rational enough. Jonah may be ignorant of some of those reasons, or at least less trusting in them than Amy, but the sacrifice being asked for here is that the workers give up livable wages and benefits for the benefit of the Cloud9 store. Amy wants to save their jobs now and possibly improve them later, but I think it's fair to ask, when does later ever come, and why are there so many excuses for later to not be today? The finale to Season 4 sees the union effort heat up as Jonah joins in and helps bring other stores on board, and he starts fighting with Amy in the break room.
If you can just help us with our problems, my hours keep getting cut and I don't make a livable wage.
Well, I do help you with that because I pay the rent.
Oh.
All I'm saying is that unions aren't always right, and corporate isn't always wrong.
That's not what you said when they made you come back to work 2 days after having a baby.
Yeah, you were living La Vida pissed.
I bet you get maternity leave now, though.
Oh, yeah, there's a really great plan for managers.
It takes a massive reality check to snap Amy out of her new pro-corporate attitude. And that reality check comes in the form of corporate calling in an ICE raid as part of their union busting, putting Mateo at risk.
We have to get Mateo out now.
Not sure how happy corporate's going to be about you doing that.
Corporate, I'm done.
Welcome back.
In spite of their best efforts, with even Dina helping, ICE manages to get to Mateo.
Stop, guys. It's okay. It's over.
I'll have more on this a little later when I discuss Mateo in detail, but for Amy, the moment brings her back to her more radical self.
Want to start a union?
The threat of ICE being deployed against workers attempting to unionize has some real-world history, and it reveals how issues such as undocumented status and labor rights intersect with one another. For a show claiming not to be making any statements, it's hard not to notice such a powerful message that both humanizes an often vilified minority group and presenting the solution as a form of worker solidarity. From this point onward, Amy decides to secretly support the union while lying about their progress to corporate.
You're like a double agent. My own Elizabeth Jennings.
Is that from The American?
Yeah, it's so good. You should just...
I'm not gonna watch it.
When the union is formed and Jonah and Sandra travel to Chicago to negotiate a labor contract, they're going with Amy's support.
We don't get to relax. It's kind of the point. No, we go to work mopping up scum in your stores and ruining our knees lifting boxes. And after all of that, we still can't afford rent.
This stuff is kind of complicated.
We'll make it simple for you. Do better, or we go on strike.
Well, it seems like corporate is caving in at first. The truth is that the negotiation was rigged.
Cloud9 just got bought out.
What?
And we were acquired by this big tech company, Zephyra. And the good news is the new company doesn't have to recognize the union contract, so our people were just like, go ahead, agree to whatever, just to end the meeting.
In this moment, there's a real sense of defeat. And when Amy goes to tell Jonah the bad news, she instead lets him enjoy this one day where he thought he finally got a win. It reflects one of the deeper themes of this series, that even when things are bad, people who care about each other can make things a bit more bearable. When we first met Amy and the rest of the Cloud9 crew, there are varying levels of hopelessness when it comes to improving their lives. But as the seasons rolled on, they got a taste for a better future. And importantly, with each attempt to change things, they managed to get a bit closer each time. An unfocused walkout eventually led to getting a meeting with management to hash out a labor deal. And had Cloud9 not been bought by tech giant Zephyra during the meeting, they might have been able to negotiate for something better. Even without that more just workplace, we can see the lives of these characters improving. And there's no better example than Amy and Jonah. They went from aimless to inspired. Amy has found a way to elevate herself financially, and Jonah seems to have a real purpose when it comes to organizing. And of course, they found some happiness in each other. That wouldn't be the end of their story, but for now, I'm going to shift the focus to a less bright part of the series.
Nobody likes Target.
One inescapable fact of Superstore is that it's rampant with product placement. While product placement isn't a new thing in television, being set in a store gives Superstore the opportunity to sell numerous ad spots within itself.
A Minions blanket, and a Minions nightlight, and some Minions candy.
While the show was generally pretty good about weaving in the product placement so it at least felt like a natural part of an episode's story, at least most of the time, there was one instance in Season 3 where it completely failed. In the episode titled Target, Jeff, after having quit Cloud9, announces he got a new job managing the nearby Target. This is revealed to be a lie later on, but not before we get many mentions of Target that feel a lot like ads.
I love Target. I like to call it Target, like it's fancy.
Garrett and Glenn end up going to a Target only to find out it's so nice and everyone is happy.
Wow, it's really nice in here. The rent's so lively, it really pops.
The reason this ad felt particularly intrusive is that it wasn't just a lingering shot or a small joke, but a whole plot line devoted to an advertisement. Making it even worse is that Superstore is advertising the exact kind of business that the show is satirizing. Cloud 9 is certainly over the top with its comedy, but it's still set in the real world, and while most giant stores probably don't have severed feet constantly showing up, workers do still face the same issues Cloud 9 workers do, like a lack of good benefits and poor wages. Target also has a history of union busting, including producing ridiculous anti-union videos like this one.
Refuse to sign and keep Target union-free.
I'm certainly not saying this one episode somehow ruins the show. In fact, there are definitely moments in the episode that are pretty fun, like watching Dina set Amy up on a date. But the ad placement here does cross a line and it sticks out.
Didn't they just find another cut off foot right around here?
Oh, it's awful. I'm an empath, so things like that really affect me.
As I discussed a bit earlier, the diverse cast of Superstore was largely a product of searching for the most talented actors for each role. But as a result of its diverse cast, this created a greater possibility for stories.
Diversity of our cast is the opportunity to throw any kind of issue at this